Welcome into the city dwellers, forest explorers, cave spelunkers, and all others to another episode of the Cloaks and Capes podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Robbie Landis, and back with us after her hiatus on the last episode is Kali Scales.
Good to be back.
We've actually been home for months, but we record so far in advance that for our listeners, you're just now getting back.
Are we really that far ahead in the recording block at this point?
It's only like with this episode, we don't have any more as of whenever they might be hearing this in the bank, but because it's every 2 weeks, we get pretty far ahead. Our guest today from our For You page and follow page on TikTok, we have GM Millie, though we're told that her players refer to her as God, as all good, fearful, and respectful players should. Millie, welcome to the show.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for having me.
Wait a minute, my players don't refer to me as God.
They refer to you as mommy, though, don't they? Isn't that just as good?
Never mind. Yeah, they
okay.
do. Yeah, that's fair.
Fair enough. So I don't know if you have all seen. Kali isn't like chronically online, so she might not have, and we might be a little bit behind here. But Millie, I'm sure you've seen the can 100 people like fight a gorilla. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna call it discourse, but that thing going around. Yeah, and there's been some videos that I've seen on the other side, like putting it in more like D&D context. Do you think that 100 commoners could defeat a Barlgura?
Action economy, right?
Action economy. One turn.
Yeah, that's the thing.
One turn.
Right?
Commoners deal, I think it was on average, it's like 100 damage, basically.
Yeah, that's
and
the thing.
A Barlgura has 80
Real life
HP.
doesn't have bounded accuracy. Sorry. D&D does.
Even if they were only dealing like 1 damage from an unarmed strike, but I think they get a D4, but even if it was just 1 damage, I think the commoners would still win. Although the 2025 Barlgura has Entangle, and I feel like if the commoners get stuck in the Entangle, they're probably not going to get out that fast, but I still give it to the commoners.
But if the commoners are coming from every direction...
Does Barlgura have climb speed? Because if it could climb, I think maybe.
I like the weird discourses that we get into just like as a people where we're like, oh, okay, it's 100 men versus a gorilla now. Then there was like, would you rather be in the forest with a man or a bear or
that
a random
was
man?
also easy.
Very easy. Bear. If not friend, why friend shaped?
Literally. Big, fuzzy, cute.
That is my Sunday party, by the way. Everything they come across, if not friend, why friend shaped?
Yeah.
Speaking of friend shape, Millie, something that we do for all the guests that we have on the show is we create magic items for them. That's why I had asked you about either an NPC or a character that's near and dear to you so that we could use that as some inspiration. Now, as is usually the case, I tried to do this literally the day before the podcast. Even though I had that information beforehand, I procrastinated. And I was like, no problem. I'll make this really quickly on stream. And next thing you know, I ended up with 4 items. So I'm only going to tell you one of them. And then if everybody else wants to hear the other 3.
I was mid-slurp and you're telling me actually 4 items. And I'm just like...
It gets better.
We've got the whole Millie line.
We do. So
it's
if you want
the summer collection.
Those of you listening, if you want to hear all of them, you'll either have to go and check out the raw version, as we're going to do the other 3 after the show, or just pay attention to our social medias, and eventually they will show up.
Check out our Patreon for the Millie collaboration.
So I tried to take a lot of different aspects from your character, and what we ended up coming up with was the 4 laws of all existence: mundane, arcane, divine, and cosmic. Pick one of them that you would like me to tell our listeners about here, and then the other 3 they'll have to go to the Patreon for.
I gotta do Call of Cthulhu, right? And we're going cosmic, of course.
Cosmic's the best one.
Yes.
So all of these are wondrous items. They are artifact level.
Jeez.
They require attunement, and they are technically cursed, kind of. It depends on your, how much of a risk you think they should be.
Extremely on brand.
So they all start with a quote by Craftmaster Hargrove from the Wanderlust Academy, because I didn't want to directly rip your character off. This quote saying, "The laws that bind all things in our universe together will never fully be understood. One thing that we do know for sure is that even attempting to harness its power is courting your unmaking."
Yes.
This ancient
Amazing.
scroll contains knowledge lost to the world and does not willingly share it. A sharp mind can pry that information from the scroll, but at the risk of their own sanity. There are 4 such scrolls known, and if you are attuned to one, you do not need to attune to the others if they are in your possession to gain their benefits. So these are kind of like very like Elder Scrolls looking, like, you know, not just a piece of paper and like a little thing, but like really. I tried to look up like what those things are called when they put like the scrolls on like spindles and stuff like that, but there's a bunch of different answers for them. So the law of all existent cosmic will attune to this artifact, increase an ability score of your choice by 1 to a maximum of 29. For each additional law of all existent scroll you possess, you may increase an ability score of your choice by an additional 1.
Very cool.
Laws of the Cosmos. You can use the power of this scroll to invoke the laws of the cosmos. Once you use one of the following properties, you cannot use either again until the next dawn. The first is temporary omnipotence. As a magic action, one creature you can see within 30 feet must make a DC 19 intelligence saving throw or gain 1 level of exhaustion and the stun condition until the end of their next turn. On a success, for 1 minute, the creature has advantage on all D20 tests, and other creatures have disadvantage on attack rolls against it. So a very like risk versus reward. Like, do we want to give it to someone who we know can make it, or someone that we hope fails it? And then Cosmic Portent. Whenever you finish a long rest, roll a D20 and record the number rolled. You can replace any ability check made by you or a creature that you can see with this foretelling roll. You must choose to do so before the roll. And finally, the curse.
Oh, the curse. Yes.
Whenever you attune to this magical item or use one of the laws of the cosmos properties, you make a DC 14 wisdom saving throw. If you fail by 4 or less, you suffer from short-term effects of mental stress. If you fail by 5 or more, you suffer from long-term effects. And if you roll a 1, you suffer from indefinite effects. And the DC increases by 1 for each law of all existent scroll that you have in your possession.
Amazing. That is so cool.
I love it.
It's perfect for the field of study and for the character as well. This whole like sort of cursed type of science divination. It is that's so cool. Thank you so much.
You are very welcome, and I'm so happy when I get good reactions out of those. The day that like I tell someone about their item, they're just like, all right, I'm just gonna die on camera.
We'll watch Robbie's soul leave his body in real time.
Well, today is not that day, so that was it's so fun to see sort of things that are kind of entirely mine being reinterpreted, because that's like I've not been in like the content sphere, like the online D&D or TTRPG field for a long time, so like getting into collaborations with people, it's just been a really cool experience, and that is like double cool, because the laws of all existence, one of the coolest things I think I've added to my game at all. So
it was definitely very challenging trying to figure out how to work those in, because we just did like a book or like a journal for our last guest, so that was like the first idea that I had, but I didn't just want to do another book or journal, so I'm really happy with what we ended up coming up with.
Yeah, some of the books for this field are super cursed as well, like completely like void black, and not an actual book, but the negative outline of a book and then void cut into that shape, and the pages are completely undiscernible to someone who doesn't speak the language of laws of all existence.
I feel like if you pick that book up, you got to know like, oh, that's not all right. But players, if they think that they can get something good out of it, they'll overlook anything. I had a player where I gave them a book bound in human flesh and written in human blood, and they identified it, and they identified that it was the tome that gives you +2 to your intelligence. I don't remember what it's called, but it's the +2 intelligence tome manual. And they're like, that's probably fine. And they just attuned to it right away. And I'm like, okay, cool. There's a demon that lives in your head now. You do get the +2 intelligence, but yeah, it's
with
cursed.
Your new intelligence, you realize how bad of an idea this was. You realize how fucked you are.
realize just whose intelligence it was that you got.
Ooh, yes.
Look, this is a pro tip for all the players out there. DMs love it if you're the type of player that presses the red button.
Oh my God. I was literally just having that moment in game the other day where I was like, I really want to have this BBEG level threat kind of flirt with one of the players. Who am I going to do that to? And I started
the answer.
I started going through my players, and I was like, oh wait,
any of them?
Oh well, So most of them are already paired off.
That's the perfect party. If you can get any of them to do that, that's fantastic.
But Robbie, this is the game that has Bella in it. So I was like, oh, my resident bad decision maker. Absolutely.
She's playing Bella in your campaign as well?
Yeah, she plays Bella on my
hilarious.
Thursday game too. And she makes
funny.
just as bad of decisions. I love it.
All right. Well, getting into our topic for today, the reason that we've brought GM Millie on, and we had mentioned that on TikTok, you are also there in your title, writer. And a lot of what comes across my feed from you is, writing world building tips. And we have yet to do a proper world building episode, where to beginning, tips for it, common pitfalls. And so I'd like to just start with Millie. I think, first of all, since we are, a tabletop RPG podcast, what would you say is like the biggest difference between world building for TTRPGs versus like a novel or just, fiction short stories?
Real quick, can I just say I'm writing my own setting right now, so I'm about to take so many notes.
I thought this might be a good for you, especially at this moment as well. Yes.
Well, for a novel, you have you can make all of the decisions, and I like to do collaborative world building in TTRPGs, specifically in D&D when the world is so fantastic. I want the players to have the power to feel like they've been a part of creating the world. So if someone wants to make up their own god, make up their own hometown, I have someone who made up a city that we've collaborated on in one of my campaigns, like a dwarven city that has like these sun forges and it's really cool. They harness the power of the sun down with crystals, and they have like fake sunlight down there because of it. And she made up like summer solstice traditions as well. So I think the biggest difference is collaboration. Like that is the biggest difference. And I've been in campaigns where the GMs don't world build collaboratively and expect the players to invest. And I don't think that is the way to get players to successfully invest in your world building.
That's a very, very good point. It's something that I could probably stand to do a lot more of. And there's a point that I was going to wait till the end to see if we have time for it, but I think this is kind of the perfect segue into this point, because I think there's a lot of crossover here. And, I think that when you're world building for your own campaign versus when you're world building for, like, if you're creating third-party content, like making a setting for other people, there's a lot of difference that goes into that, because at least when I create things, I purposefully try to leave out details or like things that some people might ask, why wasn't that in there? Or like, what's the secret here? And those were intentionally left that way so that you can create those yourself. There was, I forget what it was in. I think it might have been the Call of the Netherdeep book, but I remember watching a video with Matt Mercer talking about it because they were nearing the end of campaign 2 and someone was asking a question and he didn't want to answer it because he's like, if once I answer it, even if it's not in the book, it becomes canon. And I intentionally want to leave that open so that, people can interpret it as they will, sort of put their own spin on it. And there's a lot of people, I just got one the other day that came in and was like, how do you know when like you're done world building, or like when you're being too specific and you need to like pull it back? And well, I don't know, Kali, what sort of problems related to this, or I guess not even problems, but like what are the challenges that you've ran into during your own setting? Like when do you know, like I should stop here so that it doesn't get specific or it isn't canonized and people can make it their own? And when do you get specific with it?
Yeah, right. So right now I run 3 games in my world, my homebrew world of Serene. And what I run into all the time is players, after we like have a big revelation or a big thing, they always want to know, is that going to be in the book? And so much of the time I have to be like, no, that's not going to be in the book. That is canon to my telling of the world, and that's how I foresee this happening. But I want every DM who picks up the book to be able to answer that question themselves. I do have in my mind a canon for the creation of Serene and how the first gods came about in my world, but I don't want to have a canon answer to that. Every DM who picks it up should be allowed to decide that for themselves. And it can be tricky when I'm running games in my setting because, of course, whatever I say most of the people playing in my games, or those who listen on the actual plays or things like that, are going to assume, okay, well, that's the canon ending. And I always kind of have to remind people, no. What's written in the book is what's canon. What I choose to make it be is my interpretation of this world, but you get to do your own thing. And so much of the time when you're writing your own setting, what you put in is sometimes less important than what you choose not to put in. And you have to be you have to let go of your baby sometimes. You can't just have it be that this world is going to be exactly as I design it and everything's going to be exactly what I want. And anyone who tells a story in it is going to tell exactly the story that it's meant to tell. No, they're going to all pick it up and have their own interpretations.
I think that sort of represents the micro and macro level of collaborative world building. If you are presenting it to the world after, the macro is people need to be able to play here. That it can't be completely definite about everything, and the micro level is then also allowing your players some breathing room to add to the world as well.
Yeah, I think a great example of that we did in one of our last campaigns is your wife, Sarah, played a pallid elf in Exandria, which there is 2 paragraphs total in all of the books that they've put out in reference to the pallid elves. There's nothing else about them. And so I basically, told Sarah, like, hey, feel free to kind of go crazy on this, right? We found all the definite stuff, that they worship like the Moon Weaver, and because the Moon Weaver is big on like, love and like trickery and stuff like that, we kind of extrapolated from there. But we have now, in our own minds, an entire canon in history and culture around the pallid elves. And now if Matt ever comes out with one and it's like the complete opposite, we're going to be like, okay, Matt, those are your pallid elves, but ours have a day where everybody's one big orgy.
Yeah. We can't hear you, Matt. We can't hear you.
No, it is absolutely one of those things where you... like my players, my first game that I ever ran in my setting was my alpha test of the world, and my players were a group. It was called Whispers and Silence was the name of the game, and I loved the story so much that I actually for the campaign setting book, I forwarded time by about 1,000 years and decided to set the book 1,000 years after the events of Whispers and Silence and canonized their role in creating the world. So those 5 players have had a very large hand in shaping what Serene is.
That's very cool. So where do you start then? That's a great question. You're going to sit down. We have a lot of people out there who, they want to start creating their homebrew world. And first of all, I know that they have in their mind that like, all right, I have to create my world before we play.
Yeah.
That isn't true. You're never going to play if you do that.
Correct.
But I'd love to hear from both of you. You're going to create a whole new world for a new campaign. You're sitting down. Where do you start? Is it with the weather almanac? Because I know some people have done that. Some crazy people create a weather almanac for their setting.
I think starting with specificity is the best way to go. I think what you need to world build will be hugely informed by the specificity of your world. And if you go to just make a general world, a general entire planet, and start there, you're going to world build forever, and world building is fun, but we want to do something with the world building as well. We don't want to just do that. So for like my homebrew setting is entirely underground. Like that's the specificity I started from, and then from that specificity, I began to think, okay, so what species will be dominant here? What type of magics will be dominant here? So obviously
worms,
worm magic and worm people and worm plot. That's how it goes in my world. So like Earth Genasi, Drow, like Underdark. Like if it's, I don't know if it's actually going to be a D&D setting or not, but I'm trying to inform it of like if I ever want to play a campaign in that world. So it is hugely informed by that. Like if you're going to play a pirate campaign, you need to know about ships, you need to know about the ocean, you need to know about the weather, you need to know about these things that are relevant to the story you're trying to tell.
So are you telling me that if I read a pirate campaign and they refer to the boat as the driver's side and passenger side, people aren't going to take it seriously?
You can do what you want, but I'm very specific about these things. So if I was one of your players, I'm just like,
actually,
Star Wars. Actually,
Robbie's here like hard to stage left.
I do want to point something out that already hearing that your setting is underground brings me to, I think, another important part of if you want people to really invest in your setting, or if you want your setting to sort of stand out, you need to think about what makes it unique, right? It can't just be traditional fantasy, because there's so many of those out there already. Breaking through that noise is going to be very, very difficult.
Limitation breeds creativity.
And
limitation.
Well, just hearing that your entire setting is underground, the first thing that I want to know is, well, what's above ground then? And then immediately and obviously you don't have to give me answers, because immediately now what is most interesting to me about that setting is what kinds of myths or tales or folklore or whatever do these different cultures and these different peoples down here have about the surface world. If they even like that, to me, I think would be the most interesting thing about it now.
There essentially was a world-ending cataclysm, but the question remains is the surface habitable or not? If people are told they shouldn't go there, and just because you keep your habits, people don't, because they don't want to fucking die.
Well, yeah, no one wants
to curse.
You're fine to curse.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And yeah, nobody wants to be the one who's going to peek their head above ground and be like, "Oh, it's radioactive up here."
Yes, because cave systems are already dangerous. Like, the big cities are safer. People already die in cave-ins and stuff like that. And then from there, the legend spreads of they got too close to the surface. That's where they died. And the main religion is Mother Earth. So it's very monotheistic as well. The dominant religion is the Earth as well. So to go, and it's called the known world is called the wider embrace, because they're in the embrace of the Mother Earth. And to go outside of Mother's embrace is also blasphemous. So there's faith that comes into play, there's superstition, there's culture, tradition, and just history.
I love that. When I first started looking at my setting, for me, the beginning point is understanding the theme of your world, because every world has a theme to it that's going to kind of inform the rest of the world's design. If you're on Eberron, the theme is probably going to be something like unchecked progress or the dangers therein. If you're on Dark Sun, the theme is everything sucks forever. On Serene, when I was putting it together, I kind of wanted to talk about how we as people deify our heroes and believe they can do no wrong. And so in my world, all gods were at one time mortal. Our gods are all spark out of mortal individuals, and everyone has the potential to spark into a god or into a demon. And that then kind of starts to inform the various societies around the world where, okay, here's a person where one of their greatest heroes sparked into the god of, what's one I just made, the harvest or something like that. Okay, well, now I can talk. It's probably a very agrarian community. It's probably going to be this. Oh, these people have a war god. What the hell happened where these people have a war god? That's not good. So I think if you understand the theme of your world and the stories that are meant to be tried to be told in your world, it'll really help you. If you just try to make a world which any story ever could be told, you're going to have a very bland, generic world, because it has to fit every story.
Yeah, because you're not the reason our world, our real world, is so interesting, despite containing everything, is because it's made of billions of people, billions of real people. You can't compete with thousands and thousands of years of civilization and billions of people working together or against each other to create a world.
Right.
You literally cannot compete.
Exactly.
With that.
You cannot. You can, but you're going to get a very bland world. Like I say, if it is okay for your world to have a niche, it is okay for your world to do a thing well and tell a certain kind of story well, because like most DMs, they're going to pick and choose the world that makes sense for their story. Don't try and tell a story about progress and about the rise of the Warforged and the plight of the Changelings and then not choose Eberron. What are you doing?
Yeah.
For me, I think because I've also started with one of my my own homebrew for system agnostic setting, and I kind of went a route that Matt Mercer did, which is he started with just one place, one city, one village. Kali, do you want to try and guess where Exandria started?
Will you give me the continent? Is it Tal'Dorin?
Swamp.
Still Ben?
Stillben.
Ugh.
Stillben was where Exandria and that adventure started. Just a city in a stinky swamp someplace.
Now I feel bad that my character had such a horrible time there and just wanted to leave the whole time.
And it just flowered out from there. And so that's what I started with. Was I came up with one concept, one city, and it's still in the very, very, very early days. But there are two, I think, big lessons that I've taken from world building. The first, I don't remember where I heard it from, but it was this idea that especially if you're doing a fantasy setting, think about like every location, what makes it stand out? What makes it fantastic, right? Because if it's just a village and there's nothing fantasy or fantastic about it, why is it there, right? It could have a giant glowing crystal that's in the middle of the city that's, giving off some kind of power. That's what drew them to it. It could be this massive mile-deep gorge where they've built windmills into it that powers the city. Like, think about something fantastic to put in there that's going to help, immerse and draw your players into this idea of a fantasy world. And then you both kind of, touched on it in both of your explanations. But I think one of the strategies about, how do I go about world building is just think of cause and effect, right? Create one thing and then think to yourself, okay, how does this affect something else? Or how does something else that I put in here affect this? Kali, you just mentioned a war goddess, for example. And, we're getting ready to finish up a campaign that your wife has been GMing for us called Paradise Arrested, which, by the way, if anyone goes and looks for that on YouTube, you can go and watch it. It is a little actual play that we've been doing. And in that, there's this question. I just realized it's kind of a little bit spoilery, but I'll try to do it as much as I can. But it basically kind of looks at the idea of what happens like when a god dies or when someone stops worshiping them, depending on where their power comes from. And so for my pantheon, I try to do a bunch of things differently. I didn't just want to have a straight up war god. And so the Golden Huntress is instead the goddess of victory and the goddess of competition, but was at one time the goddess of war. But when they were no longer at war, people still needed to show reverence to her in some way. And so she made this gradual shift into the goddess of victory, the goddess of competition. And now even like merchants, pay homage to her because they want to be victorious over their competition.
I mean, that's an important point. Like, you can look to a lot of like the real world analogs, right? Because I mean, yes, was Ares the god of war? Yeah. But when you see a lot of the old Greek myth, he ends up being the butt of the joke a lot of the time because not very many people actually worship war gods. Like, sure, some societies did, but it's not very common because the average person is worshiping whoever makes their food grow better. They're worshiping their sun gods. They're worshiping people that they need to get by in their day-to-day life. Most people aren't out here paying homage to the god of war except for when they've been conscripted into the army and are hoping to make it home alive. That's the only time.
I do like the idea now of a god of war that people pray to keep war at bay.
Oh, that's my war god.
And be like, look, if y'all don't start praying and give me some more sacrifices and tribute and stuff like that, then I'm gonna send you to war. So then you're praying to me for victory. Is that what you want?
My world's war god is named Gesherin, and they people all over the world, they usually will name like coliseums and stadiums after him. They'll call them Gesherin's Temple or something to that effect, because they will then compete in like gladiatorial events or stuff like that to try to appease Gesherin and prevent actual war from breaking out.
Gods are like writing pantheons. It's such a rich part of world building. I think like especially fantasy genre, we just gravitate towards it. It's just so much fun to make up your own gods.
Well, and throughout history, right? Like there's a reason every society turns to the deific to explain what they don't understand, because it is fascinating. We always put a very mortal spin on them. We look at them as we can only see them in our own image, which is always very interesting to me.
Yeah.
I have a question for the two of you. This is because real life hate all that religion does in inspires, quote unquote. But within tabletop RPGs in fiction, I love it because then we can explore, the good that it potentially has and the stories that it can tell. And I like one of two ways that pantheons are done, and they're both at completely opposite ends of the spectrum. One of them is more like, the way that like we look at like Greek gods. There's like an almost like family dynamic to them. There's a finite sort of number of them, or at least like a main sort of cast of characters. And then on the other side, it's where there are just untold numbers of gods, and some are more powerful based on how many people worship them, like the sun god. But then there might also be these very sort of niche, almost forgotten ones, like the god of poems of the babbling brook. And there's really just no end to them. Do you have any preference or thoughts, I guess, on either sides of those, on what kind of pantheon or what kind of deities you like to use in your world building?
I want everything. I want everything.
Well, you just said we had to be specific and restrictive to breed creativity.
Yes, and I think there's specificity in what dominates the world is necessary. I don't think everything needs to be as popular, but I think people will have potentially worshipped different things as history moves through. Like my home country, Norway, we used to have our paganism. And then we switched to Christianity, and it used to be the way, even though Norse pantheon has specific gods, there was also worship of like local spirits, so that like it wasn't as, they didn't look at it as religion in such a strict way as we do. So I think there's a fascinating, and there's almost like this tendency towards more monotheistic religions as progress in our world. And I think that says something about our world as well. So I like the transitions between different kinds of religions, but yes, I would tend towards one or the other depending on the setting.
It's interesting how often countries go from we used to be blank and then switch to Christianity. That's such a common theme throughout the world.
Yeah, that's definitely part of my setting as well. We used to have this, and then now we worship Mother Earth.
This always happens to when we have a show talking about like the basics of 101 of something, that by the end of it, we get on like a specific thing, because even though Pantheon's religion ideology is a part of world building, that's also like its own meaty topic that we will have to see about bringing you on for another episode in the future to get into that alone. So final thoughts. If you could give one tip on world building to writers, GMs, aspiring world builders out there, something that you wish you had understood before you started. Not just that I wish somebody would have told me, because sometimes you have to get in there and like experience doing something for yourself before you realize like what the wisdom there is. So what would be your advice to someone that you wish you understood?
Just start writing, because and keep moving. Like, don't get stuck on any one city or any one place or any one thing for too long. Just keep moving, because I guarantee you, no matter how much time you spend on that first neighborhood of that first city, when you've gotten about a year down the line and have done a bunch of other things, you're going to go back to that and go, oh, this sucked. And you're going to start over anyway. So I've already like redone my first city like 3 times at this point. So just start and keep moving and keep writing things down. Write what's interesting to you. Don't try to make it fit everything.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is very, very important. And there's among writers, we often say you can't improve upon a blank page. It's much more important to get something down and then start building from there. It doesn't have to be perfect when you start, but it has to be started. And I think for me, a big one is also like going, this is also like I don't even read Brandon Sanderson, but he says you should go deeper, not wider about things. Like that it's you should invest time into learning the concepts that you are presenting without presenting too many things all at once.
Yep.
I think that's a very helpful thing.
I think both of those are very important. And mine is I think advice I give on everything, and that's 1% a day. If you can just do 1% a day, it adds up really fast. Start playing within your world as quickly as you can, because with even those broad or those deep details that you have to start with, once you start playing, you're creating and world building then as well.
Yes.
And having it in practice, I think, goes a long way to helping you decide on certain details. And if you can't decide on those, when you get your players into that world and seeing what they're most interested in, that's going to help you drill into places on where you can dive deeper as well.
100%. When I started writing Whispers in Silence, all right, I had one city done when we started playing. But I was then able to see, okay, what are my players asking about? What do they think is interesting? What is the audience asking about? And to help inform what I needed to keep developing.
I think also curiosity is one of my biggest things. Be curious about the world around you. History, real life history isn't boring, and you can steal so much from real life history. Like, be curious about the people who came before you, the people who are here now, and you have an endless font of inspiration.
All right. Well, with that being the end of our topic today, we're not quite done. At the end of our show, we like to read through some Am I the Assholes, which has been submitted to us in character. So this isn't like real life stuff where someone like maybe did something terrible or is being gaslit into thinking they're the asshole.
This isn't someone who is like, so my DM stopped bringing food for the table and I did this. Am I the asshole?
These are people that took something in canon as their character and wrote into us, and you get to help us decide if they are assholes or not. Gotcha. So we're going to start with, am I the asshole for wanting a bit of excitement after a day of silent meals?
Can I just say this is a classic setup for someone who's about to be a real asshole?
We'll see. My parents didn't think I was being a real paladin, so they carried me out to some city I don't remember the name of, and I had to stay at this sketchy tavern. But the worst was a group I met. There was some human fighter girl, some old man dwarf wizard, and I think a tiefling rogue lady. They lived at this tavern, and they told me that every day they check a board outside the tavern for quests, but at the start of the day, they just wanted to eat breakfast. So I eat fast and ask when we'd check the board, and they said after breakfast. And they didn't talk during breakfast. Every time I asked a question, they just stared at me or sipped from their juice. When we picked up a quest, it was catching a caravan the next day. You heard that right. The party was given a task but had to wait a whole day to start the quests. So they went window shopping around the city, had to traverse the length of the city multiple times, which was like the whole day. And after buying nothing, we went back to the tavern for dinner. When we sat down for dinner, I was asked what I wanted. There wasn't a menu, so I asked for the vegetable of the day. And at dinner, the same thing happened. Nobody talked, and I wasn't allowed to talk to those at the table. I just had to eat and wait a full 40 minutes before the group talked again. I was getting restless and realized there would be no excitement. So I went to pick a fight in the bar, and a regular at the bar, humored me. Bartender said no fights were allowed in the tavern, so I announced that we'd go outside. Outside, I start combat first. I hit them, but they struck back even harder, and after a couple more attacks, I was incredibly hurt. The individual fighting me looked completely fine. They beat me up, went back inside the tavern, and I asked the old man wizard if there was anything I could have done to win, and they said no. They were always going to win. So that night, I wrote a letter telling them I was out of here and I never went back to that city again. Am I the asshole? Jazz Bloomstar of the Elven Bloomstars. A little bit more context just for you. This was both in character and out of character. I talked with the person, and basically this group would eat dinner while they played D&D and would role play eating dinner. So like a good half of the session was literally them just eating. And when this person tried to be like, okay, well, could we actually play? No, we're eating dinner right now.
And also no talking allowed. Like
no, because they were in the middle of eating. So yeah, no. Yeah, stunned silence.
That is not the most fun part of anything.
No,
the silence isn't. Also, if you're eating with people. Hello, I'm so confused.
Yeah, I love watching your reactions, like as your brain is breaking. Like, no, that doesn't make sense.
So, okay, I'm gonna say, in character, if you're bored because people aren't talking at dinner and your idea is to pick a fight, you might be the asshole. But I get it. So you're the asshole, but I get it.
I would have started swinging too, to be honest. Like,
I might have been the asshole also.
literally, like, who wants to roleplay or play just like sitting around? Like, you didn't invite me to this podcast just for us to do an hour of silence together. Like, what?
The part that really gets me too is asking the wizard, like, what could have I done to win? And them saying they were always going to win. It feels like the DM saying, no, you wanted to try and do something that I didn't want you to do. You were not going to win that. Don't try it again.
Yeah, I'm punishing you for wanting to play the game.
That's...
Yeah.
I've decided how the game is going to be played, and it's by doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I'm going to
I'm
hope that them saying, so that night I wrote a letter telling them I was out of here and I was never coming back to that city. I'm hoping that's you saying you left the game because
Long
Jesus.
Discord message.
Yeah.
That's the letter.
And being like, hey guys, you do you, but this isn't the table for me.
Now,
Yeah,
I will
I
also
think as
say,
well.
based on some context clues you mentioned at the beginning, your parents didn't think that you were being a real paladin, and so they just took you and dropped you off at some town. So it also sounds to me like you maybe came from a privileged family and you're a paladin, so you're probably an asshole for different reasons. But in this case,
No, yeah.
probably not.
Like I say, I think you're the asshole, but I get it.
Yeah.
For our second one, am I the asshole for teasing a conspiracy theorist and, along with some friends, causing a breakdown? So our party ended up in World's End, the southernmost city on the continent, and as such, an incredibly cold place to be.
Oh,
It's also
man.
quite remote.
I don't like it when you start this, and that's one of my world cities.
So those who stay here are pretty isolated, which sometimes leads to some mental breakdowns. While we were there, my sister was off doing some doctor medical shit, so I grabbed a new friend to go find some fun. We found a man who believed there was like mole people living under the ice, so my friend and I encouraged him, giving him some feedback on his ideas. Then another friend chimed in, unknown to us via telepathy, and the conspiracy guy got it in his head that the moth is watching over everyone and guiding his way. So he went to go cocoon himself, and the next day was preaching about the moth. We all thought it was great fun, but I've since been told that apparently that was rude of us. Now, nobody got hurt, so I don't see what the big deal is. Am I the asshole? Formerly Faye.
Well, this is one of my players, so I'll step back.
I
Millie,
mean-
does it make you an asshole to trick somebody into thinking something via telepathy?
Kinda, yeah. Under the assumption that this is like a real person, yes, tricking people isn't a nice thing to do. Enabling their delusions is also not a nice thing to do. Caveat. It's really funny, though. It is really fucking funny.
So we were down.
First question, do the mole people exist?
So we were down in World's End, which is basically, yes, it's imagine being down in Antarctica. It's dark for 8 months of the year, effectively. People do go a little bit, you get some cabin fever down there. It gets crazy. And so I was just looking for NPCs for them to meet, and they met a conspiracy theorist who, of course, all of his conspiracies are mostly right. There aren't mole people, but there are people who live underneath the ice. So he's mostly right. And so one of our people, who it was for a while basically a Mothman, basically started sending him messages under the guise of the moth, and his already fragile mind was like, oh my god, a god is speaking to me, and decided to cocoon himself in blankets until he too could transform.
Aww. I mean, in a way, maybe it gave him a different kind of purpose or direction in life.
I think he just needed probably not to stay down there for 12 months at a time.
Yeah, you're also formally Fae, and I feel like most Fae, even inadvertently, are assholes.
She became a werewolf, so she is formerly a fae.
Yeah.
Oh.
This is the aforementioned
Interesting.
Bella from earlier in the show. My resident bad decision maker right here.
Yep. In my game, this same Bella made a deal with
Uk'otoa.
a demigod, Uk'otoa,
Yeah.
but to be fair, she does now have a were-kraken form. So I bet she thinks it was probably worth it.
Listen,
Lots of were things.
she's big on
Going
having lycanthropy, just a little bit of
Yeah?
lycanthropy. That's
A
kind
little bit of
that's her
lycanthropy.
whole gimmick. Yeah,
Just a touch
just
of
a
that.
touch of lycanthropy. Yeah.
She has a lot in my campaign. Were-kraken, were-panther, were-bear, werewolf. She has 4 different forms. Yeah. I decided to make it a thing. It's like a Pokemon thing now. She's just trying to collect them all.
Oh, I love that. No, her whole thing is I don't have to learn if I don't. What is it? If I don't die, I don't have to learn.
Yeah, if there's
Yeah.
no consequences, I don't have to learn anything or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Well, there seems to be consequences. It's just that she's entirely fine with them.
Well, Millie, thank you so much for joining us and coming on the show here. Here at the end is where we give you the floor to let people know where they can find you. If you have any upcoming projects or anything you would like people to go and check out, the floor is yours. Let them know.
Well, you can find me on TikTok. That's the only place that I post, because I'm relatively early on in my journey. We'll see. Maybe more stuff later down the road. Millie Odegard for anyone who wants to find me there. I talk about writing, tabletop role-playing games, general storytelling and media, and have a lot of cool conversations with people about writing craft there. It's really, really fun for me. In terms of projects, nothing much really. I mean, talks for some actual play stuff, but it's nothing that I can share too much about right now. I'm working on a video game with a friend of mine. I'm working on books, but like so far down the line that it doesn't matter to plug it right now, because it's like in 2 years you can play this thing that I'm making now, and it's just like, well, we'll see when it comes out. It comes out.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate that. And of course, as for us, if this is your first time listening, if this isn't your first time listening, then you know what we're about here. But if it is your first time, besides podcasts, we also do a ton of homebrew. Over at our Patreon, you can find almost 1,000 items.
What are we going to do for our 1,000th magic item?
It's going to be something silly.
It's
like
gonna
our
be something
900.
dumb,
Yeah, like our 100th illustrated item was the Bottle of Clouds, which lets you take a long rest in 2 hours, which is nice. But for like a 100th item, it seems a little...
We got to do
we'll see what
something
happens.
special for our 1,000.
Make something controversial again. Make something that the power gamers think they can exploit and farm for engagement.
But you never know what that's going to be until you put it out there.
True.
We would have never imagined it would be the Volix figurine.
Yeah. We have 15 subclasses now. We have 2 species. The most recent release is the Oath of Shadows Paladin. You can find us on social media on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, Tumblr, YouTube, everywhere. And please, please, please leave a rating or review on this podcast or episode if your platform lets you do that. It helps people find us. But otherwise, that's going to be it for us. So until next time, keep watching, keep listening.
The Cloaks and Capes podcast is created by the support of its listeners and generous Patreon donors. Special thanks to our myth makers and legends: Heartslot, Dolvik, Celtic Crow, Darkflux, Gamergal, Tater Thoughts, Chili, and Capelli. Views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of its hosts. Editing and production by Aaron Pillen, and music provided by Aidan Hageland. If you want to support the Cloaks and Capes podcast, check out our Patreon over at patreon.com/cloaksandcapes, and check us out on Threads and Instagram at Cloaks and Capes TTRPG.